Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamsha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome back to our Bhakti Sastri Nectar of Instruction course. In the last class, we discussed the preface to the Nectar of Instruction. It was quite an elaborate discussion. And I would like to just recap, because 1 week is a long time and we have usually our memory is short, we usually forget. So I would like to just recap on what we discussed in the preface, and then we will continue today with text 1. I would like to know how many of you have done the study, pre-Bhakti Shastri study of studying text 1. Sincerely raise your hands. How many of you have studied text 1 as part of your pre-Bhakti Shastri study? There's only one hand up. Okay, there is Pavanabala Prabhuji also who has raised his hand. Only Santana Lakshmi Mataji is also there. What about others? Okay. So please do study and come, and it will be of tremendous benefit for you all when you study and then you come and hear and get a deeper insight into Nectar of Instruction, and then when you again study after the class, then you get a still better understanding. So I would humbly request devotees, it is part of the pre-Bhakti Shastri that, the pre-study, you have to do it, and you got good time, 1 week time if you join the classes. So you can always study and come back for the discussion. So that will be very, very nice. So I will begin with a brief recap of what we have discussed in the last two classes, and then I will go ahead with the discussion. This is just a slight overview. So Upadesh Amrit we saw the terms, Sandesh, Nirdesh, and what really is Upadesh, and how Upadesh Amrit was originally jewels of prema, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke and later on collected by Rupa Goswami and given to us. This was an overview of what each verse deals with. And then we saw the overview based on the definition of Uttama Bhakti, Anya Abhilashita Shunyam. Then we saw like a metamorphical or a alankar from the form of alankar, how these garland of verses reveal. These are like a necklace. There are pearls in the necklace which reveal sadhana bhakti, raga bhakti, and prema bhakti. Then we saw the overview based on Bhaktivinoda Thakur and analysis of how these anarthas which the jiva is caught in maya, how by studying Upadeshamrit we can become free from it. So such an important book Upadeshamrit is. Then we went to the preface, how this Krishna conscious movement is conducted under Rupa Goswami. We are Rupanugas. Why Rupa Goswami? Because he established Mahaprabhu's movement in this world. Some glories of Rupa Goswami from Chaitanya Charitamrit, and then Gaudiya Vaishnavas are known as followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we are the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. We are the essence of the four Sampradayas. And how by studying the literatures of Goswamis, we are taking shelter of the Goswamis. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to give us the highest gift. He has come in the mode of the best of the gopis, Srimati Radharani. And in order to understand that, we have to follow the six Goswamis. Rupa Goswami gave us Upadeshamrit so that he has given us like a guidebook. Just like Mahaprabhu gave us Shikshashtakam, Rupa Goswami gave us Upadeshamrit. And in order to understand the loving affairs of the gopis, all begins with control of the mind and senses. And everyone is engrossed in the modes of passion and ignorance. One has to come to the platform of goodness by following Rupa Goswami's instructions. We explained one example of action in the three modes. And the last paragraph, how advancement in Krishna consciousness depends on the attitude of the follower. Manovritti, what we call the positive attitude and the negative attitude, or the optimistic and pessimistic. And in respect to that, we saw other outlooks also, like stupidism and realism. And then we saw how Rupa Goswami's instructions constitute the first instructions for neophyte devotees. And although we might be 10-15 years in Krishna consciousness, but from the Golok Vrindavan perspective, we are still neophyte devotees. And then we saw that preface usually is written by the author to give the purpose of why he's writing this book. And we had summarized that in the end. And that's how we finished the preface study. So today, now we will begin with text 1. Text 1 of Upadesh Amrit. Vacho vegam manasa krodha vegam jivva vegam udarpasta vegam etan veganyo vishaye tadira sarvam apimam prithvim sasishyat. So this is a beautiful verse, and it is having a particular chanda. I think it is Anushtubha. I don't recollect. I'll have to refer by notes. But I feel it is Anushtubha, and it is sung in this meter. Bhajo vegam manasa krodha vegam jivva vegam udarapasta vegam etan veganyo visheta dhira sarvam apimam prithvim sasishyat. So this is the meter it is sung in. Now let us go to the word by word meaning and the translation of Srila Prabhupada. A sober person, dhira, that's how he refers. Dhira. Dhira means one who is sober. Dhir also means one who has controlled his senses. And Prabhupada in Bhagavad Gita 2.13, he mentions, Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tata dehantara praptis dhiras tatra namuyate. Those who are dhira, they can understand the spiritual subject, how the soul is different from the body. And when the body leaves, the soul is, goes to the next body. So dhira, there it is mentioned. So one who can control his mind and senses, he's called as a dhira. A sober person, dhira, who can tolerate etan vegan yo vishaheta. Sahet, sahana. And in Hindi we know this word, sahana. Sahana means to tolerate. Vi sahet means vishesh rupena sahet. One who can especially or specifically tolerate what? Urge to speak, vacho vegam. Vacha means, the urge to speak. And we will come to the concept of what is this vega later on. The mind's demands, manasa vegam, the actions of anger, krodha vegam, and the urges. Okay. What happened suddenly? Okay, sorry, there was some technical problem. And the urges of tongue, belly, and genitals. Jivva vegam, udara upastha vegam. So Jivva vegam is separately taken, and udara and upastha is taken together. Now, Rupa Goswami is a very cultured and a very refined personality. And you can see the language, what he is using also. Prabhupada in his word-to-word translation, udara everyone knows is stomach, belly. And upastha, Prabhupada translates as genitals. But Rupa Goswami has used the word upastha. Upastha means upa and stha means situated. So after the belly, which is situated below, that is what is called as upastha. And that's why Rupa Goswami, being a very highly cultured, refined personality, he has used this term upastha. But the acharyas know what the real meaning is, and that's why Srila Prabhupada has given in the word-to-word meaning and in the translation also. Is qualified to make disciples, so shishyat, all over the world. Sarvam apimam prithvim. So here, right in the first verse of Updeshamrit, Rupa Goswami is speaking of one who is a dhira, who has controlled his 6 urges. He is a spiritual master, he is a Tridandi sannyasi, and he can make disciples all over the world. Now, if we read this first verse, and we might think, oh, what Rupa Goswami is saying, oh, I should start making disciples all over the world. But first, let me check whether I have controlled all these 6 urges. So, in one sense, as I had mentioned, that this verse speaks about the symptoms of a Tridandi Goswami, Tridandi Swamir Lakshan, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Tridandi Swamir Lakshan. So, one who has mastered these 6 Vegas and completely they are under his control, and he has conquered these urges, he has attained pure devotion, he is a Tridandi Goswami, and he is qualified to make disciples all over the world. That is the point. And for sadhakas who are entering the door of bhakti, who are entering the temple of devotion. Now, to practice bhakti, one of the obstacles is that we should, control these urges, because these urges act as an obstacle for sadhakas. So that is why those who have entered the school of bhakti or the temple door of bhakti, Rupa Goswami is advising, first thing, what is to be done. First thing is you control these urges. Because if you don't control these urges, they will act as an obstacle for you to progress in bhakti. And that's why first thing he is explaining to the sadhakas is to control these urges, these 6 urges. So that is why this verse deals with both a Tridandi Swami, symptoms of a Tridandi sannyasi, and a self-controlled Madhyamadhikari symptoms. So Madhyamadhikari who is practicing devotion, he should control these urges. And how to control these urges? Rup Goswami is telling in this verse, and acharyas are giving commentary and giving us hints on how these urges manifest and how one should regulate them and control them so that one can advance in bhakti. So as one practices uh, to restrain or to control these urges, slowly he'll advance to higher levels. And one who has attained complete mastery, then he is a Tridandi Goswami. So from a Madhyamadhikari, he will advance to the level of Uttyamadhikari and become a Tridandi Goswami, one who has mastered the senses, and then he can make disciples all over the world. So that is how we understand text 1. Text 1 is dealing with this. Now, let me give you a practical example to understand this. Suppose there is a fighter pilot, who has joined the Indian Air Force because he has this dream, I want to become a fighter pilot. Now, when he joins as a fighter pilot, because he has this passion and love for, driving a plane or a jet fighter plane, initially, when he is learning to fly a plane, jet fighter plane, he is, in the learning stage. He first has to understand the whole control systems and get mastery over controlling the flight, the fighter plane. So initially, he's always checking, oh, this is the control system. This is, the buttons for the ejection. This is the buttons for the activating the missile. So he's in the learning stage. So first, he attains mastery over controlling the fighter plane. And once he becomes expert in controlling the fighter plane, later on, he can attack the other planes and destroy the enemy planes and attain victory. But first, if he doesn't know how to control his own fighter plane, then where is the question of hitting missiles to the enemy planes and attaining victory? He himself will be injured trying to fly the fighter plane, and he will meet with an accident and he will die. So similarly, sadhakas first should attain mastery over these urges. And when they attain mastery, they have controlled their own bodies, they have controlled all their urges, and they have become self-controlled now. And now they can control all others. Sarvam api mam cha prithvim sa shishyat, it is mentioned. Now, this control is not like, trying to artificially control others, but this control is out of pure love. Because he has attained mastery, he is a Tridandi sannyasi, he has attained pure love. The others, that is the disciples, they naturally surrender to him. And that's how this spiritual master can make disciples all over the world. So this fighter plane example, initially in the learning stage, when he's trying to attain mastery over functioning of the fighter plane and getting fully equipped with the skills and mastery over how to, fly the fighter plane, is like the Madhyamadhikari self-control. And once he attains that mastery, then he can shoot other enemy planes and attain victory. That is like the Tridandi Swamir Lakshan. So that's how both these things, aspects, are covered in text 1. Any questions you have, you can always raise your hand and ask. So this is about text 1. The other aspects we will take up in text 2, 3, and 4. That is a different thing, but I'm just explaining now text 1. Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. The word three dandi, does it specifically mean anything, Prabhu? Because literally it means three and dandi means stick, right? So,
Yes. So the Vaishnav sannyasis are called as Tridandi sannyasis. The Mayavadi sannyasis are called as Ekadanda sannyasis. Because they think, the Jiva is one with Brahman. We are God. So they are Ekadanda sannyasis. They are called as Ekadanda sannyasis. And the Vaishnava sannyasis are called as the Tridandi sannyasis because they offer the mind, body, mind, and words in Krishna service. Kayana manasa vacha. Keval indriyarapi. In the Bhagavad Gita also it is mentioned, I think in 5.10 or 11. I don't recollect. So body, mind, and words are completely surrendered to Krishna. And that's why he's called as a Tridandi sannyasi. So there are three rods, all fixed to each other. And then there is one small, rod on the top also. And that represents the jiva. And all this is tied in the cloth. And when one becomes a sannyasi, when the spiritual master sees that he's ready to take the renounced order, then he's given the sannyas, mantras and the sannyas initiation. At that time, he's given this rod, and that rod represents the Tridandi sannyasi. There is one question by Dhanalakshmi Mataji. Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. You said that first Vacha, then Manasa. Why Vacha is first and second comes Manasa? Because the mind is the one which initiates and makes you speak. So why can't the Manasa be the first and the Vacha be the second?
Okay.
But I also have another contradictory one, which means that even though the mind may contemplate something, but still, unless and until it comes through the words, it doesn't come into effect. Others don't know about it.
Okay. So this I will take up when the discussion.
Is my contemplation right?
I will take this discussion when we come further. But till now, if we have discussed something and any clarification you want, you can ask about the overview.
You got it.
I will take up that. I will take up that. Okay. So this is regarding how this text one speaks about both these symptoms of a Tridandi Swami Lakshan and the self-control Madhyamadhikari symptoms. Now next, let us come to the concept of Vega, urge. Now, Rup Goswami is a very grave acharya, and he has used the term Vega, urge of the speech, the urge of the mind, the urge of the anger, the urge of the tongue, the urge of the belly, genitals. He has used the word urge. Prabhupada has translated urge, Vega as urge. It can also mean desire also. Then Rup Goswami could have used the word Vacho Icha, Manasa Icha, Krodha Icha, Jiva Icha, Udara Upasta Icha. But he is very specific and he has used the word Vega. Now here in this chart, please hear carefully. Every spiritual term we speak, these terms are the words spoken by mouth. And the words have a concept in our mind. So both these aspects are there. So Vega can mean just urge or desire. But the Vega concept is what? Urgent desires which come as a wave or a force. And that is why Rupa Goswami has mentioned Vega and not Icha. Now, the urge to speak comes out when suddenly, two people meet each other. That's when the urge to speak, really hammers us. So when this Vega comes in the form of a force, at that time you need to restrain them. And that is why Rupa Goswami is using the word or the term Vega. It's if he had used the word Icha, then we would never speak. So that is why he is using the word Vega. Sometimes, you see uh, the river, sometimes you tell in Hindi, no, ye nadi bahut veg se beh raha hai, it is flowing with the great force. And you need to stop it by having some obstruction like a dam or something. So that time we use this term Vega. So similarly, these urges come in the form of a wave or a force. And when they come in the form of a wave or a force, at that time you should restrain them. So it's not all times. Only when under certain conditions they come in the form of a wave, at that time you should restrain them. Now I will give you one example from my personal life, which I experienced in order to try to understand this term Vega. Once I and my another friend colleague were just passing by the Govinda restaurant, and we just had finished our lunch prasad. We were full. But suddenly in the Govinda restaurant, there were hot samosas which were fried. And this colleague of mine, I also smelled the samosas, he also smelled the samosas. But when he smelled the samosas, the fragrance of the samosas through the air entered his nostril, it hit his mind. And suddenly he had a twist. He turned. Immediately ordered one of his friends, please go and get me hot samosas. So already he was full because he had lunch, but this urge, Jiva Vegam, it actually happened at that particular time when we were passing through the Govinda restaurant, and he was attacked by this Vega of trying to fulfill the tongue by the taste of these hot fried samosas. So this Vega came because we were passing through Govinda. If we had been passing through some other place, through the Goshala, then the smell would have not come and he would not been attacked by this Vega. And because we were passing through Govinda, the Vega came and he became afflicted by this Vega. So when this kind of a Vega comes, at that time, we should control it. We should, it is Rupa Goswami saying, control it. So that is why he is mentioning the term Vega and not Icha. So with respect to these spiritual terms, which are spoken by the mouth, and these words have, concepts in the mind, I will bring out the example of the term energy. The term energy is the same word spoken by the mouth, but carries different concept based on the context. Now, I'll give you this example of a doctor who is operating on the operation table, and he tells a nurse, supply me energy, I'm running out of energy. Now, the nurse understands what energy means, and she will immediately get the oxygen, cylinder, and the oxygen cylinder is set and supplies the oxygen during the operation table. The same doctor, when he goes home, he tells his wife, I am running out of energy, please supply me energy. So immediately the wife understands that my husband wants food or prasad, and she immediately gets a hot meal. So the doctor used the same term, energy, but the nurse understood as oxygen cylinder and the wife understood as food. So the term can be the same, words which are spoken in the mouth, but they can carry different concepts based on the context. In the nurse situation, it meant the oxygen cylinder. For his wife, it meant food. So that is why every spiritual term, we should just not go by the words which are spoken, but what the concepts they carry. And that is why this Vega has a different concept. I'm coming now to the desire. Similarly, Vega is urge, but what kind of urge? These are urgent desires which the mind immediately wants to fulfill through the senses. I gave the example, hot samosa being fried in the kitchen. So immediately, these are like not regular desires, but these are urgent desires. They come and they immediately said, please fulfill my desire, please fulfill my desire. This is how they attack, in the form of a force or in the form of a wave. And these kind of desires is what Rupa Goswami is telling us to restrain them, to control them. Not all kinds of desires. So sometimes when you have a stomach trouble and you tell, I am in urgency, I have to leave, I have to leave. So this is a kind of an urgent call which has come, nature's call, and you cannot stop that. You will have to immediately attend. So these desires are with pertaining to the body. And Ayurveda says that when these kind of Vegas, these are also called as Vegas, mind you, but they have to be attended. But Rupa Goswami is speaking about another kind of Vegas. That are these 6 Vegas, which he has mentioned in text 1. These, when they attack, when they come immediately as a force or a wave, they have to be restrained. So I have mentioned about it. Normal urges, these are called as desires, like hunger. Morning, early morning, after clearing our stomach, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, there is Agni in the stomach and there is a desire to urge to eat. So that is Ichha, and it has to be taken care. Afternoon, lunchtime, we eat our afternoon meal, and then evening, light something food. So these normal urges, they are Ichhas, and they have to be fulfilled, like thirst. When you're thirsty, this is not a Vega. What Rupa Goswami is saying to control. No, this is not a Vega. This is to be fulfilled. There are, in Ayurveda, mentioned certain urges. They are also called as Vegas. Have to be immediately acted upon, like urine, defecating, flutters, sneeze, hunger, thirst, sleep, cough, breathing on exertion, like you have jogged, and because of the working of the lungs, there is a lot of demand for the oxygen, and if you try to stop it, you have to also breathe heavily, so that there is a lot of intake of oxygen, because to compensate that. So all these kind of yawning, tears, vomiting, so these kind of urges which Ayurveda mentions, they have to be acted upon. But what Rupa Goswami is mentioning in text 1, they should be restrained and they should be controlled. So that is the meaning of the term Vega, the concept of Vega. One Mataji had a question, so I would like to take up that. Somebody had raised their hand. Any question about Vega? You can use the raise hand button whenever you have the question, because yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes.
Prabhu, this Vega urge you said, no, that is that can be compared with the speed also.
Yeah, it comes with a very high speed and immediately says that fulfill my demand, fulfill my demand. So these kind of urges, the 6 urges what Rupa Goswami is speaking, those have to be restrained. Like moment 2 people come together, the urge to speak becomes very strong, very powerful, and we have to restrain it, control it by speaking only what is necessary. Otherwise, we come under the control of that vehicle. When we had our meal, our hunger is satisfied, and we immediately smell the fried samosas which are being fried in the kitchen. There is no hunger in the stomach now because the stomach is full. But now the mind is demanding because it has now tasted, smelled the fragrance of samosas. And there is now something called a pseudo hunger now. It's not real hunger, pseudo hunger, because the tongue wants to taste, although the stomach is full. So this kind of jivva vegam has to be restrained. That is what Rupa Goswami is speaking in this verse. Is it clear, Mataji?
Yes, yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Any other questions anyone has? Any other questions? I hope everyone is clear with the concept of Vega. It is very important to understand what exactly is Vega. Okay. Now, Rupa Goswami has mentioned about these 6 urges. Shad Vega. Vacho Vegam, Manasa Vegam, Krodha Vegam, Jivva Vegam, Udara Vegam, and Upasta Vegam. So actually, if you see, there is the one urge of the mind is analyzed and classified into 6 urges. Actually, if you all observe, the urge to speak is because the mind is filled with so many things, so much nonsense, or the mind can be filled with only Krishna and you would like to speak only Krishna Katha. That is, that is positive engagement of the urge to speak. But the mind is filled with so much nonsense and you cannot control it and you speak it through your mouth. The anger is also there in the mind, and that's why we get angry and we use our hands and legs sometimes to punch others. But the real anger is there in the mind. The urge to eat is because of the desire in the mind. The smell of the samosa fragrance entered the nostrils and the mind now developed a desire to eat. And the mind can enjoy the desire through the instrument of the tongue. So in one sense, it is only the urge of the mind only, in one sense. All these 6 urges are that one urge of the mind. The udara, stomach. Although sometimes our belly is full, still the mind is not satisfied. Ye dil mange more, and you want to eat more. And the belly might be saying, no, you're already full. There is no space inside me. But still the mind has an unlimited desire. It has unlimited space within himself to, taste gulab jamun or rasgulla in a feast. So udara is also again the desire of the mind. And similarly, the desire of the upasta. It's ultimately the desire in the mind. So it is this one desire of the mind Rupa Goswami has analyzed into 6. Why? So that we can, when you break up, analysis means to break up. And when you break up and deal individually each of these, then we can deal with these urges and control the urges and attain mastery over the urges. So that is why that one urge of the mind is analyzed into these 6 different urges. So that is, one of the questions which was asked, and that answers. There was one question by Lata Sundar Rajan Mataji. Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, you were just saying about the desire and the urge. Actually, suppose, for example, when I look at an jamun, within a fraction of second, we just act upon it. Maybe I'll just go and then I will take it and I'll put it in the mouth before me realizing that I'm doing it. Even the same way when we are speaking with someone, before I realize what I'm speaking, it just comes out. So the urge and there is a difference, no, Prabhu? The urge and the desire, there is.
No, first let me clarify. I have explained the difference between what is a Vega. Vega is like the desires which come like in the form of a wave or a force. And that's why I termed it as urgent desires. Urgent desires means these desires come with a sense of urgency and tell immediately, please fulfill it now, please fulfill it now. Like a child, When he's with the mother, he sees the ice cream, he just, starts pulling the mother, get me the ice cream, get me the toy. So like that, these urges come like that. So that is Vega. Icha is something which I use in normal term, like, there is hunger after, we get up in the morning and it is time for breakfast. It is a normal desire which is to be fulfilled because there is hunger in the stomach is empty, and you have to have a breakfast. That is Icha. But here, Vega we are dealing now. Vega we are dealing. Now, second aspect about your question, yes, what you're saying is true. The moment we see the gulab jamun, the senses have seen the gulab jamun, the mind processes, the intelligence, says, yes, I want it, and the hands immediately go. So the whole processing internally, what is happening is very, very, very fast. It is like a supercomputer. And we have had the gulab jamun, and later on the stomach trouble is there, then we are realized, oh, why did I eat so much? It's too late by that time. So that is why, because it is basically because of the mode of passion. The activity is very, very fast. And that is why we have to come to the mode of goodness. We have to come to the mode of goodness. And we have to learn through our lessons how this is happening internally. As you gave the example, yes, it happens like that. The whole processing where the senses see the sense objects and the mind develops the desire, and the mind sends the input to the intelligence. The intelligence sees in the vasanas. The vasanas are there, the impressions are there. Oh, previously I had gulab jamun, it was very tasty, just go for it. So all this processing is happening at a very fast rate. We hardly can analyze or realize it, and we are into it. So, but when we slowly, introspect, reflect on these activities, what happened, and we write it down, and then we start analyzing it. Oh, this is, really a powerful Vega, and I have to restrain it. Then how do I do it? So basically, there are techniques and methods by which we can analyze these things and work on it. So when I deal with pacification of the 6 urges, that time I will be going into that explanation. So we will go to that when we discuss the pacification of the urges. Like, I'll give you one example because you have put forth this question. Like, take the example of anger. Moment somebody speaks something which is hurting to us, we become angry. The urge of anger immediately manifests in the mind, and we would like to immediately act upon it. The airs, the pranas also become very active, and we start heavily breathing. And our hands also become, we clench our fist. Sometimes it can happen. So it is said that if you can, take some deep breathing, inhale. If you take some deep breathing, immediately the intelligence can calm down, and we can say, oh, maybe I should not react now. I should reflect carefully on what he has said, and then maybe I should write it down. I should not react immediately, because then I will come under the urge of the Krodha Vegam, which is not at all healthy. So like that, these kind of exercises or these kind of contemplative tools have to be used in our practical day-to-day life in order to restrain these urges. I hope it is clear, Mataji. Okay. There was one more question. Dhanalakshmi Mataji. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, you were telling about that 6 sense. I mean, the 6 things through which our vacha, manasa, krodha, and then the 4th one, jiva. I didn't understand because my mind went off somewhere. And then is the stomach, urges of the stomach, and then the last one also I did not understand. So the 4th and the 6th. Yeah, jiva and upashta.
Oh, your voice is not audible, Prabhu.
Okay, one second. Yeah, now
That's
it is
fine.
audible. Yeah, sorry. Yes, Mataji, what was your question exactly? I did not get your question.
No. Can you explain the fourth one and the sixth one? Because I was not attentive to listen to you.
It's just in one line it is mentioned. Vacho Vegam, Manasa Vegam, Krodha Vegam, Jiva, Udara, Upastha.
No, I
Jiva,
want to know the meaning of Jiva and Upastha.
no, Jiva is the urge of the tongue. Udara means stomach.
And
And Upastha, Rupa Goswami, being a very refined, cultured personality, has used the word Upastha instead of genitals. That's it.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Fine. So, as I discuss these concepts, I usually take question answers, and it is important, I feel, because the subject has to be clearly understood. So that's why I don't rush to the subject, just explaining the verses. Because if you understand the concepts and then you study the book, you'll really be highly benefited. So that's why I go, my method is like this. So now we have understood the 6 urges, that is that one urge of the mind is analyzed into 6. Now, let me give you the overview of text 1, purport. Now, Srila Prabhupada's purport is mainly what we will be studying. We will not be studying the Acharya's purports in part of our Bhakti Sastri, because first we have to thoroughly understand the Bhakti Vedanta purports. So we will be studying Srila Prabhupada's purports line by line, and I will be giving some explanation on that. So you all have the books, and please, you can do this study. I will show you the actual book. Now, Srila Prabhupada begins here. This is paragraph 1. And then paragraph 2 is here, real atonement. Then paragraph 3 speaks about control of the urges. So here you can see paragraph 1 and 2, the main theme is atonement. Then paragraph 3 to 8 are the 6 urges and pacification by the process of bhakti. Paragraph 9 to 19, Srila Prabhupada is explaining the Anuvritti explanation of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And paragraph 20 is the conclusion. Srila Prabhupada begins his purport with the concept of atonement, and then pacification of the 6 urges, and how Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has analyzed the 6 urges and what is his explanation, and then he gives his conclusion. Now the paragraph numbering is done as per Veda base. So I showed you the Veda base book here, and here is paragraph 3. Sometimes some of the new prints have different page numberings, so please number your books as per the Veda base only. Especially NOI is okay, but especially Ish Upanishads, there is a lot of change in the paragraph numbering with the new prints. So, but NOI, I hope it is same. So use these as your paragraph numbering, and that will become very interesting when you study yourself the purports based on these themes. So this is the overview of what we will be studying in the purport. Now, another important aspect which we are going to understand is Rupa Goswami is speaking about controlling the mind and senses. What is the connection of bhakti and control of mind and senses? Why is Rupa Goswami speaking about controlling the mind and senses? And what it has connection with bhakti? In fact, the path of Karma Yoga, the path of Jnana Yoga, the path of Ashtanga Yoga speaks about Shama and Dhamma. Shama is control of the mind, and Dhamma is control of the senses. In Ashtanga Yoga, there is the Ashta Anga, Yama and Niyama, where there is a lot of emphasis of control of mind and senses. But in the path of bhakti, the bhakti limbs are Navida. Navida bhakti we call. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Pada Sevanam, Archanam Vandam Dasyam, Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. So in the path of bhakti, we are supposed to hear Krishna Katha. We have to do Kirtan about Krishna, Nama. So nowhere in these Angas is the mention of controlling the mind and senses. So why is Rupa Goswami speaking about controlling the mind and senses? Now that is my question to you all. Before I explain, what is maybe your understanding why Rupa Goswami is speaking about controlling the mind and senses, where in the path of bhakti, there is no limb which speaks about controlling the mind and senses. It's only in the path of jnana, ashtanga yoga or karma yoga. So why is Rupa Goswami here speaking about this now? Anyone would like to answer can raise your hand. What do you think? What is the reason Rupa Goswami is speaking? Yes, Dhanalakshmi Mataji. I have unmuted you.
Okay. Hare Krishna Prabhu. As regards this mind and senses, these are the things that has to be controlled, and as it's an obstacle for bhakti. So if we are able to control these two, then it's like half the battle is won. That we will be able to proceed in our bhakti for surrendering, because our mind is such a thing that which can act, because Krishna has given us the freedom. So that mind is the one which takes care of that freedom and makes us go away from him. So if we are able to control the mind, it will be. Is my answer okay, Prabhu?
Yeah. See, what you're saying is quite true, but Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu or in the Bhakti limbs doesn't specifically mention about control of senses, control of mind. It is only in the path of Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, where the angas of their path is to control the mind and senses. The angas of bhakti are nowhere control of mind and senses at all. The angas of bhakti are Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. Some points what you have brought out is quite true. You're correct about it, but let me hear also some others. Mohan Lal Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhuji, to control the mind and senses, it is very important, because if we are not controlling the mind and senses, the desires comes. So desires are the main obstacles in the path of the spiritualism.
Okay. I will reframe my question. Please hear carefully. Bhakti angas are the Navida angas. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam. There is nowhere mention of control of senses, control of the mind. But Rupa Goswami is here speaking about controlling these urges. Whereas in the path of Gyan or Ashtanga Yoga, there is mention of angas as control of the mind and senses. So why is Rupa Goswami emphasizing here in the beginning stages of bhakti that we have to control? What is the reason? What is the connection between bhakti and the control of the mind and senses? Okay, so we will like to hear because it's important. Who had raised the hand? I forgot. Okay, Lata Mataji, I think. Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Prabhu, Shravanam, Kirtanam. Shravanam is hearing and Kirtanam is listening. See, we do all those things through the senses. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, remembering. So it is through the mind. So whatever that is given, that 9 process of bhakti, we are doing it through the senses and the mind. So when these are not controlled, we will not be able to do these activity perfectly, I think. Hare Krishna.
Yes, exactly. This is true. This is true. This is what exactly the answer is, that although the limbs of bhakti are Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, and these are the main angas of bhakti, but while executing these angas of bhakti, if the urges are not controlled, then we cannot perform these angas of bhakti. So these urges act as an obstacle in order to perform these angas of bhakti. And that is why Rupa Goswami, right in the first verse, is speaking about controlling these urges. Suppose we are hearing Krishna Katha, and our consciousness should be fixed on the speaker, and we should hear actively Krishna Katha. But again, there are samosas being fried in Govinda's restaurant, and our urge to eat manifests there. So our consciousness is absorbed in when will I leave this place and go and eat, samosas in Govinda's. So in that sense, these urges act as an obstacle in practice of bhakti, and that is why Rupa Goswami in the beginning is speaking about it. So that's an excellent answer. I will not take the others now who have raised their hands. So I would like to continue the discussion. So we will continue with our discussion now. Now, I will just also give a little more brief explanation what is being explained by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Bhakti means Bhakti means Anya Bilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavritam, Anukulena Krishnanu, Shilanam Bhaktir Uttama. So the definition of pure bhakti is Anya Bilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. Favorable execution of devotional service. So what is favorable? We do that. What is unfavorable? We don't do that. So there is no mention here in the definition of pure bhakti. I have not quoted that in the slide, but I'm just explaining. There is no mention about, controlling the urges, which are unfavorable for bhakti. So there is no mention. But one of the limbs of Sharanagati is what? Anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya varjanam, rakshisheti vishvasho, goptutve varnam tata, atma nikshepa karpanya, shadvida sharanagati. So Sharanagati, which is, begins with Shraddha, faith. It begins with faith, where we have faith in sadhus, we have faith in shastras, and we have faith in the bhakti process. So when we begin the Sharanagati process, there is this 6 characteristics of Sharanagati, Anukulyasya Sankalpa and Pratikulyasya Varjanam. So accepting the favorable and rejecting the unfavorable. So these 6 urges are to be rejected because they are unfavorable for us to practice Sharanagati. So when a devotee enters into the temple of bhakti, into the temple of devotion, in the beginning stages, if he doesn't control these 6 urges which are unfavorable to Sharanagati, then they act as obstacles. And that is why Rupa Goswami in the first verse is speaking about controlling these urges. That is the reason the 6 urges are not directly related to the definition of pure devotional service, but they are related to the 6 characteristics of Sharanagati when one enters into the temple of devotion. That is why they are unfavorable and they have to be restrained. Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions Chaya Vega Sahi Yukta Vairagya Ashray Name Aparada Shunna Oibe Nirbhay. those who tolerate the 6 urges, Chaya Vega Sahi, Sahi means to tolerate, in shelter of proper renunciation, Yukta Vairaga Ashray. That means these 6 urges have to be dovetailed in Krishna service. We have the tendency to speak, so we speak Krishna Katha. So when we do this Yukta Vairagya, then what happens? Name Aprada Shunya. And without fear, Nirbhay, we become free from the offenses to the name. So I had mentioned, when we don't control these urges, then we commit Nam Aparad, we commit Seva Aparad. We had discussed that, if you remember, in the preface about these anarthas. How by following text 1 of Rupa Goswami, we can become free from aparads. Nam Aparad, Seva Aparad, Jiva Aparad, and Vaishnava Aparad. All this we can become free. So when we control these urges through this Yukta Vairagya, we become free from Nama Prada, and then we can attain mastery over the senses and the mind, control the urges, and further advance in devotion. So that's why Rupa Goswami is in text 1 explaining to control these urges. Any questions or any clarifications regarding that? Now I will go to text 1. Okay. So let us now go to, okay, there is one question. Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Prabhuji, but this urge may be for favorable to Krishna consciousness also, no? Sometimes to talk about Krishna or to, not every time, but
no, Rupa Goswami is mentioning in text 1 these urges which come as in the form of Veda. They are unfavorable and they have to be controlled.
okay.
Pacification, Srila Prabhupada will speak. He will speak how these urges are unfavorable and how to make them favorable. Prabhupada will speak in his purport.
Okay.
So the tendency, is there that when we come in the association of devotees also, sometimes we, talk mundane subjects. It is there. When we come to the temple, the talk should be about Krishna because Krishna is the center. At least when we come to the temple. The home is also a temple. So everything, discussions should be, Krishna should be the center. Even if we are discussing about, our daughter marriage, because she is part and parcel of Krishna, she's been given us to by Krishna, and how it is favorable for her to practice her spiritual life further. So talk should be centered on Krishna. But usually, because of unlimited impressions in the heart, the tendency is to talk mundane subjects because of unlimited impressions. And that's what, Sukdev Goswami says in the Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 1st chapter, 2nd verse, Shota Vyadini Rajendra, Nunam Santi Sahasrasya, Apashyatam Atvatam Tatvam, Griheshu Grahamedinam. Those who are materialistic people who have no knowledge about spiritual life, Apashyatam Atvatam, they have hundreds and thousands of mundane topics to be discussed. So this is Prajalpa also. Prajalpa is not favorable for devotional service. So that's why he's speaking about controlling the urge of the, speech. Is it okay, Prabhuji? Clear? Okay. So now we will come to the Prabhupada's purport. We had discussed, let me go back to the overview. Paragraphs 1 and 2 speak about atonement. Now we will start discussing paragraph 1 and 2. Now, if you see, Srila Prabhupada's purport begins very abruptly. Rupa Goswami has spoken about 6 urges. So Srila Prabhupada should start speaking something about the 6 urges. But Srila Prabhupada seems to be abruptly starting his purport discussing something from the Srimad Bhagavatam. What that has to do with the first verse of Rupa Goswami? what this Srimad Bhagavatam discussion has to do with Rupa Goswami's first verse of Updeshamrit. We might not be able to connect. So let us first see that. So Prabhupada says, in Srimad Bhagavatam 6, 1, 9, 10, Parikshit Maharaj placed a number of intelligent questions before Sukadeva Goswami. One of these questions was, why do people undergo atonement if they cannot control their senses? So Srila Prabhupada begins this discussion, and this is there in the Srimad Bhagavatam 6th canto. So let me give you a brief picture or the summary, what is the discussion happening in the 6th canto. In the 5th canto end, Parikshit Maharaj heard the description of the hellish planets. And when Parikshit Maharaj heard how the jivas are put to extreme suffering in these hellish planets, being a pure Vaishnava, naturally his heart was compassionate. So in the beginning of the 6th chapter, Parikshit Maharaj, first in few verses, he says that you have explained the Pravritti Marg, that is there in the 3rd and the 4th canto. You have explained the Nivritti Marg, the path of liberation, which is there in the 2nd canto. You have narrated the lineage of Maharaj Priyavrat and Uttanapad, that is again there in the 3rd canto and the 4th canto. And you have also narrated Priyavrat dynasty, which is there in the 5th canto. And you have narrated how the jivas who don't control their senses or who commit sinful activities, how they suffer. Narakan. Narakan means they suffer in this hellish planets. Now tell me how these souls can be saved from going to hellish planets. So this is the question Parikshit Maharaj put forth to Sukadeva Goswami. Sukadeva Goswami, in order to test the intelligence of Parikshit Maharaj, first mentions that if they take up to the Karma Kanda process of Prashit, if somebody commits sinful activity, the moment he realizes that he has committed a sinful activity, he should take the procedures of the Dharma Shastras, like the Manu Samhita and all other Shastras, and he should do proper atonement. And the moment he commits a sin and he realizes it, he should not wait for a long time. And to the degree the sin is there, the deeper the sin, the deeper will be the atonement. Just like in Ayurveda, Lagu and Guru. Lagu means light, Guru means heavy. If the disease is very deep rooted, then the Ayurvedic physician will give a long treatment with many medicines. And if the disease is light, then he will give some light treatment of some, medicines, light medicines. So similarly, the degree the sin is deeper, he has to take up that particular atonement which is mentioned in the Dharma Shastras. And he should not wait for long, because the more the time he waits, the more the sinful reactions will manifest, and the more he grows old, he will not be able to perform those prashchita, because he will with the passage of time he will forget that, and then he will be caught up with the reactions which will be following, and will be implicated, and ultimately he will be led to the hellish planets. So immediately he should take measures, and that is why it is said that moment Chanakya Pandit says that 3 things we should immediately act upon. What? Fire. When there's a fire, immediately you should act upon. Disease, immediately you should go to the Vaidya. And debt. When you take a debt, loan, immediately you should start working on clearing. The more you allow the time, what happens? The interest will keep on increasing, and your tension and anxiety will increase, and that will affect your health. And especially, I know many cases because of debt, people commit suicide. Many cases are there in today India, farmers committing suicide. And last year it was rampant because of heavy rains here. So moment these 3 things are there, disease, debt, and fire, you should immediately act upon. So immediately when one commits a sinful activity, one should act upon it and perform prashchit. So when Parikshit Maharaj heard this answer, he was not at all happy. And he, in these verses 6 and 10, he's explaining what is the use of undergoing this prashchit. Atonement is prashchit. What is the use of it? Because ultimately he cannot control his senses. He will perform prashchit, and after some time, he will again commit that sinful activity. And again he will perform atonement. So here in this chart, I have brought out that it is because of avidya, deep-rooted ignorance. One has uncontrolled senses and one performs sin. And because of that, he suffers. Now, Sukdev Goswami gave the solution of prashchit, by which he can avoid this hellish suffering. But because he has uncontrolled senses, again he'll have the tendency to commit sin, and again he will be dragged to the hellish planets. So that's why Parikshit Maharaj rejected the proposal of his spiritual master. So here in these verses, I will first take these verses and then go to the explanation of the purport. Drushta shutabhyam yat papam janan ap atmano hitam karoti bhuya vivasha prashchitam ato katam kvachin nivartate bhadrat kvachit charati tat puna prashchitam ato partam manne kunjara sauchavat. So Parikshit Maharaj rejects Sukdev Goswami's proposal of prashchit, and he says what? Drushtva. Drushtva means to see. Shruta. Shruta means to hear. Yat papam. He sees that a person commits sinful activity and he suffers. He hears from the Shastras that if you commit sinful activity, you will undergo hellish suffering. Jananapi. He knows. Atmano ahitam. It is not in his hita. Karoti bhuya vivasha. But still he, commits sinful activities. Bhuya. Bhuya means again. Why? What is the reason? Because of his uncontrolled senses. That is the reason he commits, again those sinful activities. That is why he says prashchit ato katam. Then what is the use of this prashchit? Sometimes kvachit nivartate abhadrat. Sometimes he sees, I'll go to this verse here. Kvachit nivartate abhadra. Oh, sometimes he ceases from the sinful activity. Kvachit charati tat puna. But sometimes again he commits a sinful activity. Prashchitam ato apartam. Apartam means it is useless. And he gives the example, manne kunjara sauchavat. I think it is like a bathing of an elephant. The elephant is dirty. It goes in the lake, cleans itself, but comes out of the lake and again rolls in the mud. So what is the use of his bathing? A person commits a sinful activity, he does prashchit, he gets purified, but after that, again he commits his sinful activity. And the reason is because of uncontrolled senses. So that is why Parikshit Maharaj rejected the proposal of Sukdev Goswami. Sukdev Goswami was extremely pleased, and he said, what? He said, yes, what you are saying is true. I will take the next verses because to continue the flow. He says, Karmano karma nirharo nahi atyantika ikshate avidvad adhikaritvat prashitam vimarshanam. Karmana karma nirharo. By doing a activity and counteracting that activity, there is a counteraction in the form of prashchit. Nahi atyantika ikshate. It is not the final, solution. Karma kanda is not the final solution. Why? Then why is then it is recommended? Because the karmis cannot stop their desire from enjoying this world. Avidvat adhikarivat. They are adhikaris who are avidvat because they don't have knowledge. And prashchitam, for them prashchit is given. So now Parikshit Maharaj, Sukdev Goswami gives the solution in the form of vimarshanam. Be situated in Gyan and don't perform activities. And he gives the example in the next verse of the example of if a diseased person eats pure uncontaminated food prescribed by the physician, he'll be gradually cured. And the infection of the disease will no longer touch him. Similarly, if one follows the regulative principles of knowledge, that is vimarshanam, he will gradually progress toward liberation from material contamination. So this is the analogy which is explained. Now, vimarshanam, the process of vimarshanam is explained in text 13 and 14. I'm taking all these verses because they are, relevant to understand the flow. Prabhupada will explain all this in his purport, but it is important for us to understand the flow. So now he gives the explanation. Tapasya brahmacharena shamena cha damena cha tyagena satya sauchabhyam yamena niyamena va dehavaga buddhijam dhira dharmagya shaddayanvita shipanti agam mahat api venu gulmam ivanala. So these processes of jnana by which one can become free from material contamination, the first is tapasya, practice of brahmacharya. Shama and dama refers to the jnana process. Tyagena, satya sauchabhyam, and yamena niyamanama refers to the ashtanga yoga process. So if one performs this with body, minds and words, he is shraddhayanvita. Shipanti agam, he becomes free from all sinful contamination. Mahadapi, greatest of greatest sins. And here he gives the analogy of what? Venu gulma ivanala. Just like a bamboo plantation, a huge bamboo plantation, the bamboo trees have small bamboo leaves which fall down below the bamboo tree. And if you just set fire to those leaves, the entire bamboo plantation is destroyed. Similarly, by this process of knowledge, the 7 processes given, tapasya, brahmacharena, all our, heart, which is filled with material impressions, is all destroyed. But when Parikshit Maharaj heard this analogy, Venu Gulma Ivanvala, he was not satisfied at his heart. Because we all know, with the beginning of rainy season, although the entire bamboo plantation is destroyed, what happens? Slowly the bamboo sprouts come in. So even with the path of Jnana and Ashtanga Yoga, although the senses and mind are restrained, but still the desires are not completely deep-rooted out from the heart. Srila Prabhupada gives the example of a person who is afflicted with AIDS disease. He suffers a lot. Then he goes to the doctor. Doctor gives him the medicine and he tells now to restrain himself and also to follow a particular diet. And by following the medicine and the diet, he gets freed from the AIDS disease. But after he becomes healthy, because the seed of desire to enjoy is there, again he will commit this forbidden activity. So the seed of desire is not completely uprooted. So although the bamboo plantation is completely burnt, but still the Venu gulmas, the Venu sprouts come up in the rainy season. So even Parikshit Maharaj is not happy when, he just expresses in his face, he doesn't speak in his words, but he just expresses in his face, and Sukdev Goswami understands. And then he gives the highest solution in the form of this verse. Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayana agham dunvanti karsneya Niharam iva bhaskara. Kechit means some people. They take up to Kevala Bhakti, pure devotion. Vasudeva Parayana, which is completely being attached or to surrender to Vasudeva. Only in such service, Prabhupada is writing a clear footnote, only in such service, without dependence on austerity, penance, cultivation, knowledge, or pious activities. That means not following these other processes which were mentioned in the previous. Agha means sin. Dhunvanti means destroyed. And here the word is used karshneya, completely. And Prabhupada again in the bracket, with no possibility of sinful desires will revive. So there is no possibility that the sinful desires will again come up. And this will happen with the practice of bhakti, definitely at the higher levels, especially after Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava. Actually, at the stage of Asakti and Bhava, all the desires will be completely eliminated. And the analogy here is perfect. Niharam iva bhaskara. Now the sins are compared to the fog, and the process of bhakti is compared to the sun. So with the rising of the sun, the entire fog is destroyed. There is no need for the sun to be in the, on the top of our head at the midday. Just the slight rising of the sun can destroy the fog completely. So that is the potency of the process and the purity of the process of bhakti. So when Parikshit Maharaj heard this, he was satisfied. So this is the discussion, and Srila Prabhupada in his introduction is speaking about this discussion because the process of atonement because of uncontrolled senses is not going to work. And that is why Prabhupada in the beginning is discussing this theme of atonement, which is there in the Srimad Bhagavatam, of how when the senses are uncontrolled, what happens? We commit sinful activity, and then again we don't learn our lessons, and again we, because of uncontrolled senses, we again commit that sinful activity. And that's why Prabhupada is discussing this. So we will go through the purport. I have discussed in brief the whole summary about why this discussion Prabhupada is having from the Srimad Bhagavatam is because it deals with uncontrolled senses. We also as devotees, whenever there is a feast, because we have not controlled these vegas, we just pounce upon the feast, we overeat, and then later on in the next day morning, why did I eat too much? Next day morning, I'm not able to get up early. I'm feeling very sluggish. I'm not able to focus on my chanting. So we realize that. And after a few days, the next feast comes up, the next festival comes up. And again, because we have not controlled these urges, we again pounce upon the prasadam, we overeat, and we similarly have this experience. And many years we go through this experience because of not able to control these urges. And that's why Rup Goswami is speaking about controlling these urges. So that is the reason why atonement has been discussed. So any questions or any clarifications till now, what we discussed? We discussed only why Srila Prabhupada is abruptly beginning his purport, the Srimad Bhagavatam discussion, what that has to do with Rupa Goswami's discussion of the 6 urges. And that's why I discussed the verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam. We did not actually go into the purport right now of the first 2 paragraphs. That we will do tomorrow. Any questions or any clarifications? Anything you did not understand? Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. When the terms yama and niyama came, even now also, you said that particularly refers to Jnana Yoga.
Ashtanga Yoga.
Ashtanga Yoga. But literally when we see yama means don't and niyama means do. So does that also not translate as Anukulasya Sankalpa and Pratikulasya Varjanam, Prabhu? It's
No, no,
basically
no, no,
don't and do's, right?
no,
Or
no.
is it different?
In the path of Gyan Yoga, sorry, Ashtanga Yoga, Yama Niyama refers to especially the Yama and Niyama of the Ashtanga Yoga. It especially refers to that. That is how the terminologies have been used. Now, in the path of Bhakti, the terms which are used, which are obstacles for our surrender, that is Anukulasya Sankalpa, Pratikulasya Vajna. What is favorable and unfavorable? Again, in a general sense, you can use as do's and don'ts. You can use as do's and don'ts. Like when we speak about sadhana bhakti limbs, there are limbs which we have to, follow the 4 regulative principles. These are the don'ts. The do's are what? Chanting of the Hare Krishna. So like that, we use these terms in a general sense, but specifically in Vedic terminologies, Yama and Niyama refer to the process of Ashtanga Yoga. Is it clear?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
Any other questions anyone has? You can always use the raise button to. Okay. Yes, Poonam Mataji has a question. Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, actually, in the middle, I got some internet problem. I just want to ask that we are in this text one only talking about the food related?
Talking about the?
Only the food related, or is it related to our tongue, like what we talk also?
Okay, now I did not clarify that. Yes. There are what is called as the karmindriyas and the gyanindriyas. The gyanindriyas are, the ears, sound, through which we get knowledge, smell through the nose, tongue is taste. We get this is bitter, this is hot, this is sweet. That is knowledge. And there is touch. And then there is eyes, which is forms. So these are called as the Gyanindriyas. The Karmindriyas are the hands, the legs, the speech. The speech is Karmindriya. And the anus and the genital. They are called as the Karmindriyas. Now, Vacho Vegam is a Karmindriya. Vacho Vegam is a Karmindriya. The Jiva, the tongue or the mouth, has this both functions, dual functions. One is it can speak and it can taste through the tongue. So speech is a Karmindriya. You can give an agitation speech by which you can be punched also. So the tongue is so powerful, the speech is so powerful that you can, it can lead to your punch. So in that sense, it is a Karmindriya. And Jivva Vegam, in the next line, when Rupa Goswami is speaking about Jivva Udara Vegam, their Jivva Vegam is a Gyanindriya. That is how the distinguishing feature is. So within this verse of Rupa Goswami in text 1, Vacho Vegam is a Karmindriya and Jivva Vegam is a Gyanindriya. So that is how we should understand. Good, you brought out this question. Actually, I should have taken it up when I was explaining the verse, but somehow it had slipped out. So I hope this is clear to you, Mataji. Okay, any other questions anyone has? So it's right 1:30, so we will stop here. Tomorrow we will be discussing the first 2 paragraphs of atonement. I have discussed in summary, but we will go through the Srila Prabhupada's book. And then we will take the next theme, that is pacification of the 6 urges, by the process of bhakti. That also we will take up tomorrow. Text 1 will take up at least 4 classes. And it is very, very important to meticulously go through the purports and understand the purport. And especially first 4 texts are very, very important for sadhakas. So we will spend more time in these first 4 verses, and then slowly other verses also we will spend time. But first 4 verses are very, very, very important for us to understand. So that's why we'll be spending more time in these first 4 verses. So we will stop here. Srila Upadeshamrit ki jai, Srila Rupa Goswami Pad ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.